Hey everyone, it's Sean Briscom here. Welcome to the Inside Stuff. What I'm going to do is I'm going to distill down the top 5 articles. I'll probably go through 3 or 4, but before I forget, if you go to theinsidestuff.org, you can download all of these articles and read them at your leisure and really get into them and learn more about what's going on behind the scenes. And that's what this is all about. Is we want to provide the information to you that is important to your personal economy rather than just the blanket information that you see online or through the traditional news media. So with that being said, let's jump right into it. The first article that I'm going to go through is from BenefitsPro, and it is entitled The Year in Review. Transamerica, Vanguard, and OneAmerica Executives review 2015 and how 2015 went and what is ahead for 2016. Okay, great article, a lot of good insight from Bank of America execs and from Transamerica and Vanguard execs, but I'm kind of partial to OneAmerica. That's the company that I typically work with the most, and there's a reason for that, and that's because they get what's going on around the world and they hedge accordingly, so to speak. So I'm going to jump down here to the interview with the CEO of OneAmerica for the Retirement Services Division of OneAmerica. Okay, his name is William F. Yeager, and he is the president of OneAmerica Retirement Services Division. OneAmerica has $56 billion in assets under management, and they serve about 1.2 million people with their Retirement Services Division. Now, let's define retirement services. Okay, we're talking about qualified plans, 401ks, IRAs, mutual funds, as well as alternative, typical, traditional retirement services like 401ks, IRAs, and mutual funds. But we're also talking about the atypical retirement services or retirement plans like annuities, insurance, and the like. You know, it's our belief that you cannot just build your nest egg or your retirement assets using some kind of diversified portfolio plan. You know, that is an accumulation plan. What we focus on is the distribution side of retirement or the income streams at retirement. So the question I have this week is, what is your income plan for retirement? When you go to your financial planner and you ask that financial planner, great, I know what my contribution plan is. I know how much money I'm going to be putting into this plan and how it's going to be diversified to get me to that magic number that I need for my nest egg at retirement. But what is the distribution plan? What is my income plan at retirement? I promise you, if you asked every single person out there, if you asked your financial planner that question, what is my income plan at retirement? Not one single financial planner can answer that question. Why? Because they don't even consider that side of the mountain. You know, don't forget the mountain. The climb up the mountain is the accumulation phase or the buildup of your nest egg for retirement. But is the goal to get to the top of the mountain and take a selfie and that's it? Build up this giant nest egg to a certain number and then quit? No. The actual goal is to get back down the mountain safely. Again, just to remind people, 75% of all deaths that occur on Mount Everest occur on the way back down. Let me repeat that. 75% of all deaths that occur on Mount Everest occur on the descent, on the way back down the mountain. Why do you think that is? Well, there's only one reason. It's because on the way up, they didn't have the right equipment. They didn't pack the right equipment in their backpack, before they started their ascent up the mountain. And that is critical. Keep that in the back of your mind for a second. Anyway, for this article, what was the biggest development in 2015 from your perspective, from OneAmerica's perspective? Mergers and acquisitions were the number one biggest development. And so he says, clearly the pace has increased and there will be more. Why does he believe that? And why are mergers and acquisitions so important to study, for us to study and understand? Well, A lot of the stocks that we have in our portfolios, in our traditional retirement accounts, are based on the PE ratio. PE ratio determines a stock value, the price of the stock, the value of that stock. And PE ratio stands for price to earnings ratio. So it's the price of the stock compared to its earnings, the company's earnings. And that ratio should be a good number if that stock is undervalued. And if that number is too high, that means the stock is overvalued. Make sense? So that's how people determine how to diversify their portfolio, is by looking at the PE ratio. But when you're talking about mergers and acquisitions, what's happening is, again, I'll say it again, the Fed has artificially inflated the stock market by giving free money to corporations so they can buy other companies and acquire those companies' earnings. The only mission and purpose for companies right now today to take 0% interest money from the Fed and buy another company is to include that company's earnings in their PE ratio. So the bottom line is, what I'm trying to say is that the E in the PE ratio is just simply wrong at this point. And therefore, the stock price, the stock valuation is completely out of whack. So if you have your life savings in the market, or if you have your retirement savings in a traditional savings account like a 401k, IRA, or mutual fund, get it out of the market now. We have simple exit strategies that you can follow where you can have a tax-free exit of that money and a penalty-free exit of that money. So again, subscribe to theinsidestuff.org, download this article, and learn more about the real behind-the-scenes issues with 2015 and where we're headed for 2016, okay? The second article I'm going to be covering today is entitled The War Against Cash. Now, is there a war against cash? Absolutely. Absolutely. Governments want to eliminate cash in order to make it easier to squeeze more money out of taxpayers. If you're carrying around cash in your pocket or real physical money in the form of gold or silver, your value of that cash or of that liquid, it's cash. You know, I consider gold and silver another form of currency. It's just they can't print more of it. So whether it's gold or silver or the US dollar, it's still cash. Why is it important for governments to control your cash? Well, very simply put, it's because they are able to stimulate the economy with artificially low interest rates when you borrow money. Well, if you have cash, you don't need to borrow money, right? So simply stated, they've already pushed the interest rates close to zero, and they haven't gotten the desired effect of more growth of the economy. The thinking in official circles is that if you could implement negative interest rates, people could be punished to be good little Keynesians. Remember Keynesian economics? Keynesian economics is the belief that if you increase the supply of currency vis-a-vis making low interest loans available to people to buy things, that stimulates the economy. Now, this is not a joke. This is what some of Kenneth Rogoff, a professor at Harvard University and former economist at the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank, wrote for the UK-based Financial Times. He said, getting rid of physical currency and replacing it with electronic money would eliminate the zero bound on policy interest rates that has handcuffed central banks since the financial crisis. Now, let's distill that down. What does that mean? Well, what that means is if they can get rid of physical currency and physical cash and replace it with electronic money, they can artificially increase or decrease the interest rates on that money. And so the zero interest rate policy, or ZIRP, as we like to call it, wouldn't mean anything to them at that point. They could throw that out the window and completely control the flow of money. Why is that important? Well, when the Fed tightens or decreases the supply of currency or money, That lowers the cost of goods and services. When people don't have the money to spend, they stop spending the money, or when interest rates go up and it's too costly to borrow, they stop buying things. What does that do to the price of those things? It drops it. It makes it go down. It's simple supply and demand. But when they keep interest rates at that zero lower bound and maintain that zero interest rate policy, all that does is it inflates the cost of goods and services. Because now money is free and plentiful and abundant and anybody can get at it. Well, what do you think people are going to do to the price of their goods and services? If it's easy to buy, they're going to increase the price. That's inflation. So here are some passages from an editorial that was published in the Financial Times. Authorities would do well to consider the argument for phasing out their currency use as another barbarous relic. Remember, the Fed came out recently. Fed Chairman Bernanke came out a few years ago and called gold and silver a barbarous relic, meaning that we should stop using it and even stop thinking about it as currency or as a means of trade. He thought it was barbaric. So he wants to do away with gold and silver as well as cash. Janet Yellen, now she's, taken on his position, and she's, says even a little physical currency can cause a lot of distortion in the economic system. The existence of cash, a bearer instrument with a zero interest rate, let me read that again. The existence of cash, which is a bearer instrument with zero interest rate, limits central banks' ability to stimulate a depressed economy. Let's define that. Limits the central bank's ability to stimulate a depressed economy. All that tells me, that's a huge red flag to me. All they're saying is that if you carry cash around, it constricts central banks' ability to manipulate the markets and manipulate the price of goods and services. So we're headed that direction, folks. Hold your cash close to you. Keep your cash savings in something physical like gold and silver, and you'll be better off when the day comes when people stop using cash. All right, let's go on to the next article. This next article is from the Economic Policy Journal, and all I'm going to do is read the title here. It says, "The squeeze has started. If you were born after 1953 and you're married, your Social Security benefits have just been cut. So congratulations, baby boomers. The money that you put into the Social Security fund is not going to be there for you now that you need it." All right. This article, again, is available on theinsidestuff.org. So go to theinsidestuff.org and download all these articles and read them for yourself. Okay. Next article I'm going to go to is from Value Walk, and it's called "The New Income Defense Industry to Help the Super Wealthy Pay Even Fewer Taxes." Now, there's a lot of belief out there that the super rich take advantage of tax loopholes. And that's true. They do. Remember that taxes are not even necessary. Why do we need taxes? If we have the ability to print an unlimited supply of money to fund these government programs like Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, A through D, even student loans, we have the ability to print an unlimited quantity of money. Why do they have to collect taxes? Why does the government have to collect taxes if we can print any amount of money that we want to? Well, the wealthiest people out there get this. And so they have teams of tax attorneys and planners who do everything in their power to avoid transferring that wealth that the wealthiest families have generated to the government. One of the biggest loopholes that wealthy families have figured out is creating your own family office. Now, family offices are very similar to hedge funds. You can manage your wealth inside of a family office, and any growth on that money can be tax-free to the family if it's done correctly. Now, again, if you're interested in these strategies, go to theinsidestuff.org and download these articles so you can learn how to game the system in your favor, how you can protect your own personal economy. The next article I'm going to go over is how new Treasury data shows how progressive America's tax code really is today. It says there's a vigorous debate among the presidential candidates over how we should tax Americans at different income levels. And some candidates argue that the wealthiest families should pay more, while most candidates contend that the middle class is overtaxed as it is. Still others argue that everyone should get a tax cut. So what's the truth? What's the real data show us? Well, the tax burdens are progressive. Right now, today, American tax system is the most progressive tax system in the entire world. And the share of income taxes paid is staggering when you talk about the income levels of different families. The top 0.1% of taxpayers pay exorbitant amount of tax in comparison to lower class, middle class, and lower class families. They pay the majority of income taxes. The top 0.1% pays an average of 25% income tax, federal income tax, versus just 15% on average for middle class families. So those of you who believe that the wealthiest families are paying less in taxes than the middle class and lower class, the data shows different. So download this article at theinsidestuff.org and learn the real true data. Get out there and look at these charts. I'm looking at a chart right now that is staggering to me. It's the average tax rates of different income levels, different family income levels, the average individual income tax rates. And it shows that the wealthiest people pay almost 40% in income tax on average. The top 0.1% of income earners pay close to 40% of the income tax versus just 25% for middle class America. Okay? Watch what the government's telling you. Watch what these candidates are talking about in the election cycle, and then learn the real data. Get to know the real data. That should really help you when determining who you're going to vote for in the next election. Okay? Now, these next two articles are just for fun. One of these articles shows that there's an automotive shift in paradigms. What is a paradigm? Well, it's a theory or a group of ideas about how something should be done, made, or thought about. So I'm going to give you a huge paradigm shift here. And we're going to talk about it in terms of cars, automobiles. So everybody that goes out and buys a new car looks for the best discount, right? Psychologically speaking, when you go to a dealership, what you're really looking for is the best discount that you can get on that car. All right? So what about these discounts off the MSRP, or the manufacturer's suggested retail price? This is another paradigm shift as automakers continue to squeeze margins from the dealers. Margins are the difference between what the dealer pays the factory and what the manufacturer's suggested retail price is, or MSRP as it's known. So consider this. A well-run dealership today spends roughly $1,500 for every new vehicle that it sells. This includes the cost of rent, utilities, commissions, and salaries, all of the overhead. An average dealership spends closer to $2,000 per car. So a well-run dealership spends a little bit less money in overhead than an average dealership does per car. But the consumer paradigm shift that we're talking about happens when we talk about the discounted price of that car, of that automobile. Are you confused yet? Well, let me put it into numbers for you so it makes more sense. A loaded Honda Pilot, which is an SUV, the MSRP on a loaded Honda Pilot is roughly $47,300, according to Edmunds.com. Okay? The average selling price of that same vehicle is $46,750. So the MSRP is $47,300, but the average sales price is $46,750. So that's an average of $550 off of the MSRP. You follow me so far? So how many people will walk away from the Honda Pilot because the dealer didn't knock off $2,000 or more from the sticker price? How many of you would expect $3,000 or more off of the MSRP? Now, this is true for whether you're buying a Honda Pilot or a Mercedes SUV. The Mercedes SUV suggested MSRP is even worse. You know, it's bringing the MSRP all over the country with very few discounts, and it's a spectacular buy, but people say, I'm not going to pay sticker price for any vehicle. And if they say that, then they're really missing out on a great vehicle at a great value. Because the way that the MSRP is priced now is totally different than it used to be. It used to be that the margins at the dealership were so much higher that they could give you a $3,000 discount off of the MSRP. Well, today they can't do that. And so the average discount is only about $550. And so people are walking away from buying cars that are great deals, great values, and great vehicles because the dealership can't knock off the MSRP to the tune of $3,000. It's insane. So just another paradigm shift in the way you should look at things, goods and services, and how they're sold. All right. And the last article that I wanted to show you was just a fun article. It says, it's from PJ Media, and it's entitled, Where's the Beef From? All right. This is interesting to me because there's been approximately $1.5 trillion on spending in a bill that was recently passed by Congress that repeals the regulation that requires meat packers to list the country of origin of beef and pork. Now, why would the government, our government, spend $1.5 trillion in a spending bill just to repeal the regulation that requires meat packers to list the country of origin for beef and pork? Why would they do that? Well, the simple answer is because the World Trade Organization last week gave Canada and Mexico the authority to impose $1 billion in tariffs or taxes after ruling earlier this week that rule that meat packers are required to list the country of origin, that rule discriminates against Canadian and Mexican livestock. So I want you people to remember that even cows' lives matter. Cows' lives matter here. All right? Jokes are free, folks. Doesn't mean they're good, but they're free. So our attitude was that we're going to use every available mechanism to get a bad idea and a bad law repealed, said Mark Dopp, the general counsel for North American Meat Institute. So while we couldn't initiate the World Trade Organization litigation, we were glad that the Mexican and Canadian governments did. So they're happy about the fact that the Mexican and Canadian governments are now imposing a tax for exporting beef to the United States. And we just spent $1.5 trillion to repeal a regulation that requires meat packers to list the country of origin of beef and pork. Those are your well-earned tax dollars. Those are your tax dollars at work, folks. So congratulations. Anyway, that's it for me. Have a great rest of the week, and we'll be talking to you again next week. Again, if you want to download all of these articles and read them at length, you can go to theinsidestuff.org.